Queen Zaraketh stood on the bridge of her massive warship, watching stars bend around them as they traveled faster than light. Her golden eyes glowed with anger as she read the report again. 3 of her best warrior teams had disappeared. Not killed in battle, not captured by enemies. They had simply refused to fight and asked to be moved to different parts of space. The queen was 9 feet tall with red armor-like skin that covered her entire body. Sharp claws grew from her fingers and her teeth could bite through metal. She had ruled the Vexthara Empire for over 300 years. In that time, she had conquered 17 different alien races. Entire star systems turned to ash when she was angry. When other species heard her name, they whispered it in fear. But now something strange was happening. Her warriors were afraid to fight a small group of creatures called humans. These humans had no powerful weapons. They had no big space fleets. They had no armies that could threaten her empire. They lived on one small planet called Haven's Rest and seemed to want nothing more than to be left alone. General Kexmore, her chief military advisor, stood beside her. His forearms crossed over his chest as he spoke. "My queen, the humans are weak. They cannot hurt us. Perhaps our warriors are sick with some kind of space disease that makes them act strange." Queen Zaraketh turned her burning gaze toward him. "Are you saying my best fighters have become cowards because of germs?" "No, Your Majesty. I am saying there must be some explanation. Commander Vextal has destroyed entire cities without blinking. Captain Mordeth once fought 50 enemies alone and won. These are not warriors who run from battle." The queen walked to the large window that showed the stars racing past them. "Then what happened to them? What did these humans do to my soldiers?" "We do not know, my queen. When we ask them, they say the humans were kind to them. They say the humans offered them food and showed them around their settlements. Then our warriors requested transfers to the Outer Rim territories." Queen Zaraketh's claws scraped against the metal wall. "Kind?" The word made no sense to her. "Enemies were not kind. They tried to trick you or kill you. There was no other option in war." "Show me the reports again," she demanded. General Kexmore handed her a datapad. The queen read through the files once more. Commander Vextal had been sent to scout a human farming community. He was supposed to gather information about their defenses and population numbers. Instead, his report talked about gardens and children playing games. It mentioned humans sharing food with him and asking about his home planet. The report ended with a request for immediate transfer away from human space. Captain Mordeth's report was even stranger. She had been ordered to test human military response by making threatening moves near their settlements. The humans had invited her down to their planet for what they called a cultural exchange. Mordeth wrote about art galleries and music performances. She described humans teaching her card games and showing her how they grew food. Her final entry simply said she could not complete her mission and needed to be reassigned. The third report came from Scout Leader Texron. He had spent 2 weeks observing human daily life. His notes were filled with descriptions of humans helping each other, taking care of sick people and working together on building projects. At the end, he wrote that he had never seen a society where people seemed so genuinely happy and peaceful. Queen Zaraketh threw the datapad across the room. It hit the wall and shattered into pieces. "This makes no sense. How can weakness defeat strength? How can kindness overcome the fear of death? Perhaps we should send a larger force," General Kexmore suggested. "A full battle group with heavy weapons. The humans will surrender quickly when they see our power." The queen considered this idea. It was the logical choice. Show overwhelming force and the enemy would submit or be destroyed. This was how she had built her empire. This was how the universe worked. But something bothered her about this situation. Her warriors were not weak or cowardly. They were bred for battle from birth. They lived for conquest and glory. Yet 3 separate groups had encountered these humans and completely changed their behavior afterward. "No," she said finally. "I will go myself. I will see these humans with my own eyes. I will discover what trick they are using on my soldiers." General Kexmore looked shocked. "My queen, you cannot risk yourself for such a small matter. Send me instead. Send 100 warriors, but you must remain safe on the ship." Queen Zaraketh turned to face him with a look that could melt steel. "Are you telling me what I can and cannot do, General?" He immediately dropped to one knee. "Never, Your Majesty. I live to serve your will. But these humans have some kind of power over our people. What if they use it on you?" The queen laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "I am Zaraketh the Conqueror. I have destroyed planets and ended civilizations. I have faced the greatest warriors in the galaxy and left them as dust. What could a weak species of pink creatures possibly do to me? She walked back to her command chair. A massive throne made from the bones of her enemies. Set course for Haven's Rest, prepare my personal guard. We will arrive in 3 days and I will solve this mystery once and for all. As the ship changed direction toward human space, Queen Zaraketh planned her approach. She would land with overwhelming force and demand to speak to the human leaders. She would discover their secret weapon or hidden technology. Then she would destroy their settlements as an example to others. But deep in her mind, a small voice whispered a question she did not want to hear. What if there was no trick? What if the humans really were just kind and peaceful? What if her warriors had not been defeated by weapons or technology, but by something she had never encountered in all her centuries of war? The queen pushed these thoughts away. She was the most feared ruler in the galaxy. She would not be confused by a species that did not even have proper weapons. Whatever these humans were doing to her warriors, she would put an end to it. The stars continued to race past the ship's windows as they traveled, toward a small blue and green planet where everything Queen Zaraketh believed about power and strength would be challenged by something she had never faced before: genuine human kindness. Jake Morrison wiped dirt from his hands as he stood up from his vegetable garden. The twin suns of Haven's Rest were setting behind the purple mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He looked at the rows of tomatoes and corn growing in the rich soil and smiled. 3 years ago, this had been empty wilderness. Now it was home to 3,000 humans who had traveled across the galaxy looking for peace. Jake had been a soldier once. Back on Earth, he had commanded troops in the wars between Earth and Mars. He had seen too much death and destruction. When the colony ships offered a chance to start over on a distant planet, Jake was one of the first to sign up. He was not the only former military person in the colony. Many of the settlers had grown tired of fighting and wanted to build something better. The settlement of Haven's Rest stretched across a wide valley. Small houses dotted the landscape, each with its own garden. The community center sat in the middle of town, surrounded by schools, workshops, and medical facilities. Children played in the streets while adults worked in the fields or crafted furniture and tools. It was simple life, but it was good life. Jake was carrying his basket of vegetables toward his house when his communication device started beeping. He pressed a button and the voice of Linda Davis, the colony's communications officer, filled the air. Jake, we have a problem. A big alien ship just appeared in orbit. It's huge. Much bigger than anything we've seen before. Jake set down his basket and walked quickly toward the communications center. What kind of ship, Linda? Military, definitely. It has weapons that could turn our entire planet into dust. The design matches the database files for Vexithera Empire vessels. Jake felt his stomach drop. Everyone in human space knew about the Vexithera Empire. They were conquerors who had destroyed entire civilizations. Queen Zaraketh was famous across the galaxy for her cruelty and power. If she had come to Haven's Rest, it probably meant the end of their peaceful colony. He reached the communication center where Linda was staring at screens full of data. Other colonists had gathered around, their faces showing worry and fear. Dr. Karen White, the colony's head doctor, was holding her young daughter close. Bill Turner, the farming coordinator, had soil on his clothes from running directly from the fields. Have they made contact? Jake asked. Linda nodded. A message came through 5 minutes ago. The Queen wants to meet with our leader immediately. Jake, what are we going to do? We don't have any weapons that could fight them. Jake looked around at the faces of his neighbors and friends. These were good people who had come here to escape war. They had built something beautiful and peaceful. He would not let it be destroyed without trying every option first. Send a message back, he said. Tell Queen Zaraketh that I am Jake Morrison, leader of this colony. Tell her she is welcome to visit our settlement. Invite her for dinner. The room went silent. Linda stared at him like he had lost his mind. Jake, you want to invite the most dangerous person in the galaxy to dinner? Yes, I do. Jake's voice was calm and steady. If she wanted to destroy us, she would have done it already. She came down here for a reason. Maybe she wants to talk, Dr. White spoke up. Jake, this is Queen Zaraketh. She has killed billions of people. She doesn't just talk. Jake turned to face everyone in the room. Listen, all of you. We knew when we came here that we might face danger. We chose to build a peaceful society anyway. Now we have a choice. We can run and hide, or we can meet this challenge the same way we handle everything else here, with honesty and kindness. But what if she kills you? Bill asked. Then you'll choose a new leader and keep building the life we all wanted. But I don't think she will. Something brought her here, and it wasn't just to destroy one small colony. She could do that from space. Jake walked over to Linda's communication console. Send the message. Tell the Queen that dinner will be ready in 2 hours. Ask if she has any food restrictions or special needs. Linda's fingers hesitated over the controls. Jake, are you sure about this? No, he admitted. But it's the right thing to do. We treat everyone with respect and kindness. That doesn't change just because someone is scary. Linda sent the message. They waited in tense silence for several minutes before a reply came back. The Queen had accepted the invitation. She would arrive with a small guard unit in 1 hour. The next hour was the busiest in Haven's Rest's history. The colonists worked together to prepare the community center for their unusual guest. They moved tables and chairs to accommodate someone 9 feet tall. The kitchen staff prepared extra food, not knowing what aliens might eat. Children were told to stay close to their parents but not to hide. Jake went home to change clothes and think about what he would say to the most feared ruler in the galaxy. He chose simple work clothes, clean jeans and a plain shirt. He was not trying to impress anyone or pretend to be something he was not. He was just a farmer who had once been a soldier, living in a small colony that wanted to be left alone. When the time came, Jake stood in the center of town with several hundred colonists around him. The air shimmered, and suddenly Queen Zaraketh appeared with 6 of her warriors. Jake had seen pictures of Vexithara before, but seeing the Queen in person was different. She was massive with red skin that looked like natural armor. Her golden eyes seemed to glow in the evening light. Her claws could easily cut through metal. Everything about her spoke of power and danger. Her warriors were almost as intimidating. They carried weapons that could level buildings and wore armor that could stop tank rounds. They formed a protective circle around their queen, ready to destroy anything that threatened her. But Jake did not feel afraid. He felt the same way he had when meeting other colony leaders or greeting new settlers. He was meeting another person, and all people deserved to be treated with respect. Jake walked forward slowly, holding a metal cup filled with coffee. Your Majesty, he said with genuine respect in his voice, welcome to Haven's Rest. You must have traveled a long way to get here. Would you like some coffee before we talk? It's still hot. Queen Zaraketh stared down at him. Her warriors tensed, expecting some kind of trick or trap. But Jake just stood there, offering hospitality to someone who could kill him with one swipe of her claw. The Queen looked around at the human settlement. She saw children peeking out from behind their parents, elderly couples holding hands, families gathered together. She saw no weapons, no defensive positions, no signs of fear or hostility. For the first time in 300 years of conquest, Queen Zaraketh did not know what to do. Queen Zaraketh looked down at the small human offering her coffee. In her 3 centuries of conquest, no one had ever greeted her with such simple kindness. Enemies either attacked immediately or begged for mercy. They never offered refreshments. You are not afraid, she observed, her voice deep and powerful. Jake Morrison smiled. Should I be? You accepted our dinner invitation. That suggests you want to talk, not fight. The Queen's golden eyes narrowed. I could destroy your entire settlement with a thought. My ship could turn this planet to ash. Yes, you could, Jake agreed calmly. But you haven't. So maybe we should focus on why you're really here. Commander Vextal, one of the Queen's guards, stepped forward with his weapon ready. No one speaks to the Queen with such disrespect. Jake looked at the commander with recognition. You're Commander Vextal, aren't you? You visited our farming community last month. How is your injured arm healing? The commander stopped, confused. During his scouting mission, he had accidentally cut himself on a farming tool. The humans had bandaged the wound and given him medicine. They had been concerned about his health even though he was there to spy on them. It is better, Vextal said quietly. Queen Zaraketh looked between Jake and her commander. This human remembered her warrior's injury? This made no sense. Leaders did not concern themselves with the minor wounds of enemy soldiers. Your Majesty, Jake said, the community center is ready. We have tables that can accommodate your height, and our cooks have prepared more food than we could eat in a week. Would you join us? Against every rule of military protocol, against the horrified looks of her guards, Queen Zaraketh nodded. Very well, but my warriors stay with me. Of course, Jake agreed. We have seats for everyone. The community center had been transformed. Long tables filled the room with specially built chairs for the Vexthara guests. Human families sat at the tables talking quietly among themselves. Children drew pictures while they waited. Elderly couples shared stories about their day. Queen Zaraketh sat across from Jake at the main table. Her massive frame dwarfed the furniture, but the humans had done their best to make her comfortable. Her warriors sat nearby, weapons within reach but not actively threatening anyone. The food arrived in endless waves. Roasted vegetables from the colony's gardens. Fresh bread baked that afternoon. Grilled meat from their livestock. Fruit pies and cakes for dessert. The humans had clearly put tremendous effort into this meal. "This is quite elaborate for such a small community," the Queen observed. Jake served himself some vegetables. "We believe in taking care of our guests. Besides, cooking together is one of the things that makes us a community." Everyone contributed something to this meal. The Queen tried the food cautiously, expecting poison or drugs. Instead, she found simple, well-prepared dishes made with care and skill. The bread was warm and soft. The vegetables were fresh and flavorful. It was better than most meals served in her royal palace. Around them, human families continued their normal dinner conversations. Parents helped small children cut their food. Teenagers complained about school assignments. Elderly people discussed their garden plants. The normalcy of it all was deeply unsettling to someone who ruled through fear. "Tell me about your colony," the Queen said. "Why did you come to this remote planet?" Jake finished chewing before answering. "Most of us were tired of war. Earth and Mars fought for decades. Millions died. Those of us who survived wanted something different for our children. So you ran away." "No," Jake said firmly but without anger. "We chose a different path. Running away suggests we were afraid to keep fighting. We weren't afraid. We were tired of the pointlessness of it all." Queen Zaraketh leaned forward. "War is not pointless. War brings order. The strong rule and the weak serve. This is the natural way." Jake considered this. "Is it working for you? Are you happy ruling through fear?" The question hit the Queen like a physical blow. Happy? When was the last time she had considered her own happiness? She ruled the largest empire in the galaxy. She commanded fleets that could destroy star systems. She was feared and obeyed across countless worlds. But happy? "I do not rule for happiness," she said. "I rule because I am strong enough to do so." "That's not what I asked," Jake said gently. "I asked if it makes you happy." Before the Queen could answer, a small human child approached their table. The girl was maybe 5 years old with dark hair and bright blue eyes. She carried a piece of paper covered in colorful drawings. Queen Zaraketh's warriors immediately reached for their weapons. But Jake held up a hand. "It's okay. She's just a child." The little girl walked up to the Queen without fear. "I drew you a picture," she said, holding up her drawing. It showed a tall figure with red skin standing next to much smaller figures under a bright yellow sun. Everyone in the picture was smiling. The Queen stared at the drawing. No one had ever given her artwork before. In her empire, children were kept far away from her presence. They were taught to fear her name before they could even walk. "Thank you," she said, her voice strangely gentle. She carefully took the drawing with her claws, being very careful not to tear it. The child beamed. "Do you want to see my other pictures?" "I drew our whole town." "Lucy," her mother called from a nearby table, "don't bother the Queen while she's eating." "She is not bothering me," Queen Zaraketh said, surprising everyone, including herself. For the next hour, something unprecedented happened in galactic history. The most feared ruler in the universe sat at a dinner table, looking at children's drawings and listening to their excited chatter. She watched human families interact with each other. She observed elderly couples who had been married for decades, young parents teaching their children table manners, teenagers helping serve food to their elders. Captain Mordeth, one of her guards, was playing a simple card game with 3 human children. They were laughing at her confusion over the rules. Scout leader Texeron was deep in conversation with Dr. White about medical techniques for treating different alien species. "This is what confused my warriors," the Queen realized out loud. Jake looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "They came here expecting enemies. Instead, they found this," she gestured around the room. "People living normal lives, being kind to strangers, caring for each other without expecting anything in return. Is that so strange?" Queen Zaraketh thought about her throne world, where nobles schemed against each other and subjects cowered in fear. She thought about her palace, where she ate alone and trusted no one. She thought about her empire, held together by terror and force. "Yes," she said quietly. "It is very strange. In my experience, kindness is usually a trick. People are nice when they want something from you." Jake refilled her cup with coffee. "What could we possibly want from you that we would risk our entire colony to get it?" The Queen had no answer. These humans had nothing she needed. They posed no threat to her empire. They offered no resources worth conquering. They simply existed peacefully and happily, in a way she had never seen before. As the evening continued, Queen Zaraketh found herself talking about things she had never discussed with anyone. The loneliness of command, the burden of making decisions that affected billions of lives, the weight of maintaining an empire built on fear. Jake listened without judgment. He asked thoughtful questions. He shared his own experiences with leadership, his struggles with difficult decisions, his moments of doubt and uncertainty. When the dinner finally ended and the humans began clearing the tables, Queen Zaraketh realized she had not thought about conquest or war for several hours. Instead, she had simply enjoyed talking with another person who understood the challenges of leadership. As she prepared to leave, the little girl who had given her the drawing ran up one more time. "Will you come back and visit us again?" Lucy asked. Queen Zaraketh looked down at the child, then at Jake, then at all the human faces watching her with hope rather than fear. "I do not know," she said honestly. But as she walked back to her transport with her confused warriors, she carefully folded the child's drawing and put it in her armor. For the first time in centuries, she was looking forward to tomorrow. Queen Zaraketh stood alone in her royal chambers aboard the massive warship Eclipse of Dominion. The ship floated silently in space above Haven's Rest, but the Queen's mind was anything but quiet. She had returned from the human dinner 3 hours ago, and sleep would not come. She pulled out the child's drawing and studied it again. The simple picture showed her standing with the humans under a bright sun, everyone smiling. In her 300 years of rule, no one had ever drawn her smiling. In her empire, artists created images of her that inspired fear and submission. This little girl had seen something entirely different. The Queen's thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from her door. "Enter," she commanded. Commander Vextal stepped inside, but he moved differently than usual. Instead of the sharp military precision she was used to, his movements seemed relaxed, almost peaceful. "My queen, I wanted to report on the human settlement's defenses," he said. "Proceed." "They have none, your majesty. No weapons, no shields, no military installations. They truly are defenseless." Queen Zaraketh studied her commander's face. "Yet you seem troubled by this report." Vextal hesitated. "Permission to speak freely, my queen." "Granted. I do not understand these humans. When I first visited their farming community, I expected them to fear me or try to trick me. Instead, they invited me to help with their harvest. They showed me how they grew food. They shared their meals with me. When I injured myself, they cared for my wound even though I was their enemy." The Queen nodded. "Continue." "Tonight, their children played games with me. They taught me card games and laughed when I made mistakes. They were not afraid of my claws or my size. They treated me like a friend." This was the word that had been bothering Queen Zaraketh as well. Friend. She had allies in her empire, but they served her out of fear or for personal gain. She had subordinates who obeyed her orders. She had subjects who bowed when she passed. But friends? She could not remember the last time someone had simply enjoyed her company. Over the next few days, the Queen found herself returning to Haven's Rest repeatedly. She told herself she was gathering intelligence on these strange humans. She needed to understand their weaknesses. She had to figure out how they were affecting her warriors. But the truth was simpler and more disturbing. She enjoyed visiting the human colony. Jake Morrison never seemed surprised to see her. He would wave from his garden or invite her for coffee. He treated her arrival as a pleasant visit from a neighbor rather than an inspection by a galactic conqueror. Other humans followed his example. They greeted her politely, offered her food, and included her in their daily activities. The Queen watched human children attend school, where teachers patiently explained mathematics and science. She observed human doctors treating sick patients with gentle care. She saw artists creating paintings and sculptures for no purpose other than beauty. She watched elderly humans tend gardens and tell stories to younger generations. Most fascinating of all, she watched Jake Morrison lead his community. When disputes arose between colonists, he listened to all sides and helped them find solutions that satisfied everyone. When decisions needed to be made about colony resources, he gathered input from experts and citizens. When problems occurred, he worked with others to fix them, rather than simply giving orders. "How do you maintain order without fear?" the Queen asked Jake one afternoon as they walked through the colony's workshops. Jake considered the question carefully. "Fear is a tool," he said, "but it's not a very good one. People who obey out of fear will rebel the moment they think they can win. People who cooperate because they believe in what you're doing will work much harder and stay loyal much longer. But what if they disagree with your decisions? What if they refuse to obey?" "Then I probably made a bad decision," Jake said with a smile. "Good leadership isn't about forcing people to follow you. It's about inspiring them to want to go where you're leading." Queen Zaraketh thought about her own empire. Planets submitted to her rule because her fleets could destroy them. Species obeyed her laws because punishment meant death. Nobles served her because refusing meant execution. Her entire system depended on everyone being too afraid to resist. "What happens when you make mistakes?" she asked. "I apologize and try to do better next time." "Want to see something interesting?" Jake led her to the colony's memorial garden. Stone markers bore the names of colonists who had died since the settlement began, but these were not monuments to war heroes or fallen soldiers. They remembered teachers, farmers, artists, and healers who had contributed to the community. "We honor people for how they lived, not how they died," Jake explained. "We remember the good they did, the lives they touched, the beauty they created." The Queen stared at the peaceful garden. In her empire, monuments celebrated victories in battle and conquered enemies. Statues showed her standing triumphant over defeated foes. Her legacy was built on destruction and fear. "What will people remember about you when you are gone?" Jake asked quietly. The question haunted Queen Zaraketh for days. What would her legacy be? Billions of dead enemies? Destroyed civilizations? A galaxy that celebrated when she finally died? She had built the largest empire in galactic history. But what had she actually created? Her transformation became more obvious to everyone around her. Her warriors noticed that she no longer spoke of conquest and destruction. Her advisors saw that she asked different questions in their meetings. Her subjects observed that her punishments became less harsh. Captain Mordeth requested a private meeting with the Queen. "Your Majesty, the crew is concerned. You have been spending much time with these humans. Some wonder if they have used some kind of mind control on you." Queen Zaraketh looked at her loyal captain. Mordeth had served her for over 50 years, participating in dozens of campaigns. She was a veteran warrior who had never questioned orders. "Tell me, Mordeth, when you played games with the human children, did you feel controlled?" The captain's expression softened. "No, my queen, I felt peaceful, happy even. It has been many years since I experienced such simple joy. And when you spoke with their doctor about medical techniques, did that seem like mind control?" "No, Your Majesty. Dr. White was genuinely interested in helping wounded soldiers, even enemy soldiers. She shared her knowledge freely, asking nothing in return." Queen Zaraketh nodded. "The humans have no special technology, no secret weapons, no mind control devices. They simply treat others with kindness and respect. That is their power. But this power came with a price. As the Queen spent more time observing human society, she began to see the flaws in her own empire. She noticed how her subjects feared her rather than respected her. She saw how her nobles schemed against each other instead of working together. She realized that her entire civilization was held together by violence and threats. The breaking point came during a routine communication with her homeworld. General Kexmore reported growing unrest in the outer territories. Several species were beginning to resist Vexithara rule. Pirates were attacking supply convoys. Rival empires were testing her borders. "My queen, you must return immediately," the general urged. "Your prolonged absence is being seen as weakness. If you do not act soon, we may face widespread rebellion." Queen Zaraketh felt the weight of her empire pressing down on her. She had responsibilities to billions of subjects. She had enemies who would destroy everything she had built if given the chance. She could not abandon her duties to play games with human children, but she also could not forget what she had learned on Haven's Rest. She had seen a different way of living, a different way of leading. She had experienced genuine friendship for the first time in her life. That night, as she stood on the observation deck watching the human colony sleep peacefully below, Queen Zaraketh made a decision that would change the galaxy forever. She would not simply return to her old ways. She would not pretend that her time with the humans had meant nothing. She would take what she had learned and try to create something better. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for a different kind of queen. Jake Morrison stood in his garden the next morning, watching the massive Vexthera warship prepare to leave orbit. He had known this moment would come. Queen Zaraketh had an empire to rule and responsibilities she could not ignore. But he hoped that their time together had planted seeds that would grow into something beautiful. He had seen the change in her golden eyes, the softening of her harsh features when she laughed with their children. The galaxy was about to discover that even the fiercest queen could learn to choose peace over war. Queen Zaraketh stood in the command center of her flagship as it traveled through space toward her home world. The stars streaked past the massive windows, but her thoughts remained focused on a small blue and green planet called Haven's Rest. In her private quarters, carefully preserved in a protective case, was a child's drawing that had begun to change everything she believed about power and leadership. 3 months had passed since her first visit to the human colony. 3 months of returning again and again to watch Jake Morrison tend his garden and lead his people with quiet wisdom. 3 months of seeing her own warriors transformed by simple acts of human kindness. 3 months of questioning everything she had built her empire upon. Now urgent messages from across her territory demanded her attention. The Zekthari Confederation, the Morval Republic, and the hegemony of Krell had formed an alliance against her. Their combined fleets were moving toward Vexithara space, sensing weakness in her prolonged absence. Her own generals reported increasing unrest on conquered worlds. Species that had submitted to her rule for decades were beginning to whisper of rebellion. "My queen," General Kexmore said as he approached her command throne, "the enemy alliance will reach our border in 2 days. Their combined forces outnumber our available fleets 3 to 1. We must respond with overwhelming force to prevent total war." Queen Zaraketh looked at the tactical displays showing the approaching fleets. Red symbols marked enemy ships while blue showed her own forces. The mathematics of war were simple and brutal. The stronger force would win, and the weaker would be destroyed or enslaved. "What do our intelligence reports tell us about their intentions?" she asked. "Complete conquest, Your Majesty. They believe your time with the humans has made you weak. They plan to divide your empire between them, enslaving or destroying all Vexthera colonies." The queen felt anger rising in her chest, the old familiar rage that had fueled 3 centuries of conquest. These enemies dared to threaten her people? They thought her weak because she had learned about kindness and peace? They would discover how wrong they were when her fleets turned their worlds to ash. But then she remembered Jake Morrison's voice asking her a simple question. "Are you happy ruling through fear?" She thought about the human children who had played games with her warriors without any fear. She remembered the elderly human couples who had shared stories of their lives together, finding joy in simple moments. She recalled the community working together to solve problems, with no one needing to threaten or coerce others. "General," she said slowly, "prepare the fleet for departure, but also send a message to the enemy alliance. Tell them I wish to speak with their leaders." General Kexmore looked shocked. "My queen, we do not negotiate with enemies. We crush them. Perhaps it is time to try a different approach." The general's 4 arms crossed over his chest in the traditional gesture of disagreement. "Your Majesty, with respect, these are not peaceful humans. These are conquerors like ourselves. They understand only strength and fear. If we show weakness by asking to talk, they will see it as an opportunity to attack." Queen Zaraketh stood up from her throne, her massive frame towering over her advisor. For a moment, the general expected the old queen to emerge, the one who would have him executed for questioning her judgment. Instead, she placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Then we will show them strength," she said, "but not the kind they expect." The message went out across subspace communication networks, broadcasting on all frequencies where the approaching fleets could receive it. The galaxy's most feared conqueror requested a meeting with her enemies. She offered to meet them in neutral space with minimal escorts to discuss terms. The response came back within hours. The enemy leaders agreed to meet, clearly expecting to be offered tribute or territorial concessions. They brought their most powerful warships as an escort, ready to destroy Queen Zaraketh if she showed any sign of treachery. The meeting took place in empty space between two star systems. 4 massive flagships faced each other like ancient warriors preparing for single combat. Queen Zaraketh materialized aboard the neutral station with only 2 guards, while the enemy leaders brought small armies. Admiral Kextar of the Zekthari Confederation spoke first. His species resembled giant insects with multiple arms and compound eyes that glittered with malice. Queen Zaraketh, your empire is finished. Surrender now, and we may allow some of your people to live as slaves. Chancellor Mordak of the Morval Republic nodded agreement. His people were tall and thin with pale skin and no hair. Your time among the soft humans has made you weak. You no longer have the will to do what is necessary to maintain power. Supreme Commander Krelnon of the Hegemony spoke last. His species was known for their brutal efficiency in warfare. We offer you one chance to abdicate peacefully. Give us your empire, and we will grant you exile on some remote world. Queen Zaraketh listened to their demands in silence. Around the table sat beings who had built their own empires through conquest and fear, just as she had done. They saw weakness in her recent behavior and moved to exploit it, just as she would have done in their position. You are correct, she said finally. I have changed. My time with the humans taught me things I had not known in 3 centuries of rule. The enemy leaders smiled at what they took as admission of defeat. But Queen Zaraketh was not finished speaking. They taught me that true strength comes not from the ability to destroy, but from the wisdom to create. They showed me that real power lies not in forcing others to obey, but in inspiring them to cooperate willingly. They demonstrated that lasting peace is more valuable than temporary victory. Admiral Kextar's laugh was like grinding metal. Pretty words from a failed conqueror. But words will not save your empire. Queen Zaraketh reached into her armor and pulled out the child's drawing, now framed in protective material. She placed it on the table where all could see. A human child gave me this picture. In it, I am not a feared conqueror standing over defeated enemies. I am simply someone sharing a peaceful moment with friends. For the first time in my life, someone saw me as something other than an instrument of destruction. Chancellor Mordak leaned forward to study the simple drawing. You would throw away an empire for a child's scribbles? No, Queen Zaraketh said. I would transform an empire because of what those scribbles represent. I hereby dissolve the Vexthara Empire. The silence that followed was absolute. Even her own guards stared at their queen in shock. In its place, she continued, I establish the Vexthara Coalition. Any species that wishes to join will be welcomed as equals. We will share resources, technology, and protection. We will settle disputes through discussion rather than violence. We will explore the galaxy as friends rather than conquerors. Supreme Commander Krelnon was the first to recover from his surprise. You have lost your mind. No one will join such a weak alliance. Your own people will overthrow you within days. Queen Zaraketh smiled, and for the first time in anyone's memory, it was not a threatening expression. Perhaps you are right. But I would rather fail trying to build something beautiful than succeed at maintaining something built on fear and death. She stood up from the table. I offer each of your empires the chance to join the coalition as founding members. You would retain control of your territory and your people, but we would work together for mutual benefit instead of mutual destruction. The 3 enemy leaders looked at each other in confusion. This was not how galactic politics worked. Empires expanded or contracted based on military strength. Treaties were temporary truces between conflicts. Peace was just the time between wars. And if we refuse your insane offer? Admiral Kextar asked. Then I return to my people and begin the work of transformation. If you choose to attack the coalition, we will defend ourselves. But we will not conquer your worlds in return. We will not enslave your populations. We will not rule through fear. Queen Zaraketh left the meeting knowing she had probably just signed the death warrant for everything she had built. Her enemies would likely attack while she was trying to implement these radical changes. Her own people might rebel against such a complete reversal of their way of life. But as her ship traveled back toward Vexthara space, she felt something she had not experienced in centuries. Hope. The response to her announcement surprised everyone, including the Queen herself. Species that had hidden from her for generations emerged to tentatively request membership in the coalition. Former enemies sent diplomatic messages asking for details about this new alliance. Even some planets within the 3 enemy empires began quietly expressing interest in joining. Jake Morrison was working in his garden when his communication device brought news of Queen Zaraketh's announcement. He smiled as he read about the dissolution of the Vexthara Empire and the formation of the Coalition. He was not surprised by her decision, but he was proud of her courage. A few days later, a message arrived specifically for him. Queen Zaraketh requested permission to visit Haven's Rest whenever the burden of leadership became too heavy to bear alone. She wanted to return to the place where she had learned that even the fiercest queen could choose peace over war. Jake's reply was simple. "You are always welcome at our table, Your Majesty. That is what friends do."